So this is what the Saraswati River is. This is what the paleo channels show. It is originating in the Shivaliks, which is the Himalaya, and then it comes down here and it falls down empties itself into the Arabian Sea. Where? But Dwarka, Prabhas, Bet Dwarka. Remember that whole thing we had discussed about the Saraswati channel over there. So there is a place, can you see Dwarka here? And you can see that the river is emptying itself here and emptying itself here, Gulf of Kutch and Gulf of Kambat.
Yes.
So this was the river Saraswati.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Walk Indian History podcast. I'm Utkarsh Mohan.
Namaste, Sumedha. As always, Utkarsh's partner in this podcast, and back from a wonderful holiday. Thank you for bearing with me and with us and the podcast.
How was the holiday?
The holiday was amazing. I recommend a Caribbean holiday to everyone. And of course, since I had gone to attend my daughter's PhD ceremony, it was a wonderful time. I am back now, fully charged up, fully relaxed, and we are on to a wonderful new topic today. What is it, Utkarsh?
We are going to answer all the questions everyone has about Indian history. No, no, that is not one episode or nothing. No, but jokes apart, it is answering a very old question that I have. I think it's been on my mind for ever since I was in class 8 or 9, or ever since we started learning history in school. Right, and if you think about it in school, what we do is we learn about the Harappan civilization or Indus Valley Civilization, as it's called. I don't know what the appropriate term is anymore. We learn a lot about that.
Yes.
That's one. At the same time, we have this, the whole all the literature, everything coming from the Veds, everything from the Sapta-Sindhu civilization, all the knowledge, all of that information, all the epics, everything. And even back then, it struck me that you have this ancient civilization which has given us all of this literature, and at the other time we are talking about something else called Indus Valley Civilization completely separately. These two seem to be completely different things. How come they kind of match in terms of timeline? I didn't know so much about geography then, but for me, the question always was, why are these two separate things? Were there two different sets of people in India? Are these different? So it's always been a confusion of mine. I, of course, know a little bit more now after some of our conversations. But today is really when I think I would love to get the answer to a proper answer to some of the questions. I know that it's not just me who's had this thought. I think it's quite a topic of discussion. Yeah. So I would love to know more about this. Firstly, why are they different? Are they different? It's just kind of leading from the first question. And then what do we know in order to make our conclusions on these matters?
So actually, that's a great way of approaching it and a great question, the way you framed it, Utkarsh, because I have been a lover of history and then a historian for a long time, and this was the mystery for me. So there's this huge corpus of Vedic literature, and there is this huge extent of the civilizational remains that we find on the sides of the Indus River and on the sides of the dried up Saraswati river bed. How can it be that the two are not related? But for the longest time, there was this thing, and it's called by the name Harappan Civilization or Harappa Mohenjo-daro, or it's called the Indus Valley Civilization. All these are misnomers. Understandable, because Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were the first two big sites to be found. And they were the two sites which created a great excitement in historical circles and archaeological circles. And interestingly, Utkarsh, 2024 is the 100th year from the year that the powers that be, archaeological powers that be, actually announced that we have found a new civilization. It was in, I think, August, September of 1924 that they announced that.
It's that recent.
It's that recent, yeah. So, but what were you expecting? I mean, these were discovered only in the first part of the 20th century, early
I had
20th
a,
century.
I thought it was maybe about 50 to 100 years older than that. But okay, that's all right.
No,
I don't think it
no.
changes the nature.
No, it doesn't. And Utkarsh, the sad part is that a large part of the remains of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, they were carried away and used for building the British railways in that area. They were
Yes,
used
this
as
I've heard.
ballast. So a lot of destruction has taken place of
I heard
Harappa
that
and Mohenjo-daro.
the bricks were so uniform that they loved using it. Something
Yes,
of that nature.
yes, yes. The Harappan and that civilized the bricks produced by those civilized by that civilization are amazing, uniform, and as we'll see when we look at weights and measures and technology, the size and measure of those bricks has passed on much
Hmm.
after
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
civilization ended. So burnt bricks are very, very important.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we are now in the 100th year since the discovery of this civilization. I am very skeptical of these dates and so-called discoveries because, I mean, who discovered it? Who knew of it? Who didn't know of it? Whose knowledge matters? So all these things
Hmm.
are very important questions, especially in a colonized country. It was only the knowledge and understanding of the white masters that mattered. It didn't matter what people themselves thought or what people themselves knew. So take this with a pinch of salt, but be that as
Hmm.
it may, it was
Hmm.
100 years ago that the world as such got to know that there is this civilization in India. And why did they think it was a civilization? Because they found some seals, some remains in the Harappa Mohenjo-daro area, and these were also found in Oman, and these were
Okay.
also found in Mesopotamia. So it's because of this that they realized that there was something large going on here. It was not just some very small thing, few artifacts found here and there, but something very large was going on. But then, Utkarsh, those were the days when the white masters had full sway over the narrative. And they had convinced themselves. Remember our episode 3, I think, where we looked at the Aryan invasion theory?
Yeah.
So you remember in that we discussed how it was very important for them to say that it was the Aryans, so called, who had created this civilization in India, and they, the British, were the inheritors of the Aryans, the white race that had actually made India. Then, the natives kind of messed it up and lost it all, and the British came back
Hmm.
again to save us. So they were totally, they had bought into this idea. They were totally into it. There was no way that they could ever agree that there was anything which was indigenous or which had come up from this soil itself. So then, okay, what to do? There was this huge body of evidence. So what to do? Then, of course, the Aryan invasion theory took on a kind of even greater and stronger life. And the theory was that around 1500 BCE, remember the date, it's very important. The Aryans came in. There was this civilization, the local one. So they smashed it, conquered it, took it down to its knees, broke it up, and then established the Vedic civilization. And this Vedic civilization then produced the Vedic corpus, the Itihas, Puran,
Hmm.
everything that we think of as Hindu or Indian was produced by these Vedic Aryans who were invaders from outside. And people who are interested in this, do go back and listen to our episode 3. We've dealt with this in quite a good amount of detail. And some of the questions that some of you have asked for this episode will also be answered if you listen to that particular episode 3. Because some people were asking about the difference between Harappan DNA and the difference between Aryan DNA. Is there an ANI and an ASI? And you remember, Utkarsh, we've discussed this
Yeah.
quite well in episode 3.
Hmm.
So that is why your textbook and even my textbook told us that there was a Harappan Mohenjo-daro civilization which was on the banks of the river Indus. And on the banks of the river Indus, there was this civilization. They were pretty good so far as native civilizations go, very good. But then they were overpowered by the Vedic Aryans who came thundering down on their horse-driven chariots from the steppes. And today it is laughable. But remember, I told you what Mortimer Wheeler did. He found a few bodies in, with a crack on the skull or in a curled up position. Remember, I
Yes, I
told you
remember
that. And
this.
then he discovered
Yeah.
that he said on the basis of that these armies wiped out the native Harappans. And then they wrote it down in the Rig Veda. So according to him, the Rig Veda is the whole testimony of how the Aryans conquered the natives, the Harappans, Mohenjo-darans, whatever you want to call them. We've discussed this too in episode 3 about the kind of ways in which the Rig Veda has been tortured to make this hypothesis come true. So if you want a real, direct answer as to why these were differentiated because of the colonial and white and imperial agenda. It suited them to be the inheritors of those invaders who had come and established Indian civilization, and they were merely removing the veneer of whatever it is that the natives did in the next 2000 years and taking it back to its pristine and original self. So you can see how it suited their narrative pretty well. Otherwise, it's just, from today's standpoint, if you look at it from an evidentiary standpoint, from an analytical standpoint, it appears absolutely ridiculous that people can still stick to this. But we've seen that the Aryan invasion theorists have not found any evidence, so they made it the Aryan migration theory. They've made it lots of theories. Now that DNA studies are also contradicting them, they're coming up with all kinds of linguistic theories, and we've talked about all this. So this idea of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro and Indus Valley Civilization, whether it is or it is not equal to Vedic civilization, the not equal to part comes from colonization, imperialism, racism. You can fill in the blanks. But
just one question.
Yes.
Sorry, 1500 BC.
Yes.
The remains at the Harappan sites, surely some of them precede 1500 BC. Is it that carbon dating was not invented when this theory was formed?
Yes, of course. Carbon dating was not invented when this theory was formed. You're right.
Okay, so and it has not been corrected since.
It has no, of course it's now going to be corrected. I mean, I'm going to tell you a lot about how it's going to be corrected.
Okay.
So now let's visualize the map of India. When we visualize the map of India, I'm going to show you something which
I'm visualizing it in my head. There's a time when I could draw the map of India and all the states accurately. I don't know if that is true anymore.
So, Utkarsh, what are you able to see right now? I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see my screen? No?
No, I can only see what's in my head. You need to
Okay. Okay, wait. Wipe that out. Wipe that out. I'm going to show you something else. First, shall we start with the map or shall we start with the dates? Okay, let's start with the map, perhaps. That would be better.
Okay.
Just give me a minute. I think, yes, I have got it. And now I will try to share my screen. And before I share it, let me tell you something. This is from the work of Dr. Prabhakar. Dr. Prabhakar is an associate professor at IIT Gandhinagar, professor of humanities and earth sciences. And he has done a lot of work in that area, bringing together evidence from humanities, social sciences, and earth sciences. Because remember, a lot of geology, a lot of, the paleo channels of Saraswati, a lot of things have to be brought together. This has to be done in an interdisciplinary manner. Also, he gives this lectures across the world in many places. And one will find it in some history books also. This particular one was given for an institution called Tamil Heritage. So I'm just using some of the visualization aids that he has put together because they are very good. Earth sciences. So he's got some great pictures of India and he's made some great charts. So that's why I'm going to use them. So the point about your geographical location was absolutely correct. The so-called Vedic civilization and the Harappan civilization, they are all Now I'm just sharing it, so I'm quiet for a bit.
Yeah.
Can you see this now? What can you see?
Yes, I can see it. I can see the map of the northwest of India and
Oh,
the Asia around it,
yeah. So
Central Asia around
maybe,
it.
yeah, okay. So maybe I should give you an even better visualization. Let's see where he has that. Okay, at 3113, maybe.
I'm going to
Yes.
switch my camera off to aid the viewer. It's easier. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So can you see the north, the center, and the western part of India? Can you
Yes,
see the Gulf of
yes,
Kutch and the
yes.
Gulf of Khambat?
Yep.
Okay. And look at the places where the river runs. Indus,
Hmm.
can you see
That's
Harappa, Mohenjo-daro,
yes.
Indus, etc. So this is the place where the the first parts of, Kalibangan, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, these were the first sites to be found, which is why we often still call it Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. So look
Hmm.
at the rivers, look at the area. This is the area where the Indus Valley Civilization flourished. The Saraswati-Sindhu civilization flourished. There is another way of looking at it, and let me show you that also. Look at this one. This is an even better visualization. Can you now see the names of the places and the kind of, rounds that have been made? Can
Yeah,
you
the
see that,
different
Utkarsh?
regions. Yep.
Yeah, different
Yes.
regions. Yes. So you have a lot of places, Harappa, Kalibangan, and is this place ringing a bell? This area near the Gulf of Kutch, we did a whole thing on Bet Dwarka and how Indus
Dwarka.
Valley,
Yes.
yeah, and Bet Dwarka, and how we have found the same signs, seals, and symbols that are found in the rest of this Indus Valley civilization. So you see where it spread. This is the central, northern, northwestern, and western part of India. So I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, if we want to go back to the so-called different Vedic civilization, do you remember the episode we did on Bharat, Utkarsh, and how we traced the Bharat
Different.
tribe? Yeah, and
Yes.
the origins of the whole country's name, that is Bharat, came from the Bharat tribe. And where was the Bharat tribe located? Bharat tribe also came from the same Harappa. This place, Harappa, Kalibangan, had come a little lower, this area, Haryana, Punjab. This was the area where it was all located. Then we have this whole part of India. In fact, of course, we have the entire part of India mapped, but this part, which also belongs to the Harappan civilization, this is mapped in all of our Vedic corpus, in the Purans, in the Itihas. Itihas, especially the Mahabharata. It maps it so well that sometimes I wonder if historians are blind. And we will have a special section on how Mahabharata has actually mapped out this entire area really, really well. So, can we now agree, Utkarsh, that the spatial location of the so-called Harappa civilization and the so-called Vedic civilization, supposedly different, is the same?
Yeah, it looks almost identical. I mean, there's a certain concentration to where the main events happen, but
Yes.
nonetheless, the broad geography is the same.
Okay. So now, if we agree on that, the next question which will arise is fine, it's the same place, but what about the time? The time can be different. And well, I mean, that's a very good question. I am stopping the screen share, so you turn on your camera. So now we are going to talk about timelines. If we've got the space established, now we want to look at the timelines. Is it true that the Vedic Aryans came later and smashed the civilization and took it over? Again, that has to do with the dating of the Vedic corpus. Why?
Hmm.
Because for the
Hmm.
Vedic Aryans, we don't have any other evidence, do we? So say mainstream historians. All we have is those texts. So we don't have any physical evidence of the Vedic Aryans. Now that's another crazy, crazy thing if you come to think of it. How come these people have left no physical evidence behind? How come? They are this huge, complex, beautiful, sophisticated civilization who can compose the Rig Veda and the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, but they don't leave one brick behind. How does that happen? Anyway, that has not happened simply because we refuse to connect them with their physical remains does not mean that they did not really leave any physical remains. But I will go back to the dating of the Rig Veda. Again, for this, I will ask people to brush up their knowledge and go back to that same episode on Bharat that we had done. Because what had we said there? That the Rig Veda has 10 books. But these 10 books are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, they are not in sequence. Their sequence is 6, 3, 7, 4, 2, 5, 8, 9, 10. Now, when were all these when were they composed? According to our friend Max Mueller, they were composed in 1500 BCE. Why does he want to say that? Because that is the time around 1900, 1800 BCE, the Harappan civilization came to an end. Right now, I'm calling it the Harappan civilization, but I'm going to give it its proper name, the Saraswati-Sindhu civilization, after I bring in the Saraswati River. So, he said that it is actually composed after 1500. It was in 1500 that the Vedic Aryans came thundering down from the steppes. So all fits in beautifully. 1500 BC is very crucial for them. If it can be proven that actually any part of the Vedic corpus was before 1500, then things become very, very dicey for them, right? So now I'll give some kind of tangential evidence. So there is the Vedanga Jyotish. According to our system of knowledge, epistemology, you have the Ved, you have the Upved, and you have the Vedang. I remember I had explained all this in an earlier episode. So all the Veds have their companion books, and then they have these 6 Angas which help you to understand them. One of them is, remember, Jyotish, Vedanga Jyotish. And Jyotish has been it has been the most successful podcast as up till now. So anyone who wants to go back can really go back and see that again. So remember, I told you that the Vedang Jyotish, which is one of the Angas of the Vedic corpus, it is a book on astronomy. So it is in the realm of archaeoastronomy. Archaeoastronomy tells us that when we read a book and we see what the position of the skies was at that time, we can date it using the position of the stars. The Vedanga Jyotish is a book on astronomy. It consciously dates itself using 2 astronomical events, and that date is 1300 BCE. Now, if the explanatory part of the Rig Veda was composed in 1300 BCE, it is not possible that the Veda itself was composed in 1500.
I have a question. The other Veds, they have not dated themselves. Only Vedang Jyotish has.
Yes. Vedang Jyotish consciously dates itself because it is a treatise on astronomy. So it dates itself with the help of certain astronomical events. But let me be a little clearer, Utkarsh. This is an astronomical treatise, therefore it is very, very clearly stated, this book dates itself at this time. However, in our entire corpus, you can use archaeoastronomy, and people are using archaeoastronomy to date all the different books of the corpus. It's still a work in progress. So there's a lot of disagreement on a number of things.
I'm just I'm not pushing back at all, but I'm just asking. See, and maybe it's the way we work today. Today, you do anything. You're dating yourself. You're writing a memo. You're doing anything. You're kind of dating yourself. So why are and from what you've described to me, the ancient Indian ability to date themselves was very complex. much more complex than the Gregorian way in which we date today, if you go back to a Gregorian calendar episode. So why then weren't these important books, epics, consciously dated by their authors? Or is
No,
it that they
so
developed over time?
no, Utkarsh, they were dated, but we don't understand it. No, for example, the
Oh,
oldest system of dating is this is called the earliest Saptarshi calendar. So when we
okay.
look at of course, there are dates. There is this
Okay.
Saptarshi calendar is the oldest one, and we are trying to understand it. If we try to understand it in our own terms, because the Saptarshi calendar is dated in a different way. Remember, we've done this
Hmm.
also. All calendars begin with epic, mythical, big events. So this
Correct,
one also
correct.
begins with this, and this is dated at 6676 BCE for the beginning of this current round of genealogies and kings and everything. So that is about 9,000 years before the present. Utkarsh, remember this 9,000 years before the present also. That's also significant.
Okay, okay, okay.
So today, after looking at all these different things, I will not say that there is any consensus about when the Rig Veda was written, but definitely it was written before 3,100 BCE. That means it was written about, say, 5,500 years ago.
Why are you saying
Okay.
before 3100 BCE?
Because there is a certain argument to it. If anyone wants to read it, I will refer them to Subhash Kak's paper, but we don't have the time to go into that argument right now. But I will refer
Any
them to.
broad stroke? What's the reason why? Or is it complex?
It's very complex, Utkarsh.
Okay, okay, okay.
So
Leave it aside.
you'll have to bring in lots of strands of many things. Therefore, we will leave it
Okay,
there.
okay,
But
yeah,
again, maybe another podcast on dating the Rig Veda. Maybe we
okay,
should do that. So,
yeah.
if we are to think of 9,000 years before the present, when the Saptarshi calendar starts, 5 to 6,000 years before the present, when the Rig Veda started to be composed. Let's keep these dates in mind.
Hmm.
And now, again, I will share something with you. Again, this is from Dr. Prabhakar's work. So, can you see a few dates here? Is the screen visible, Utkarsh?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay.
it is. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Now, Dr. Prabhakar has done this very wonderful work of also locating and situating it chronologically along with many other old civilizations. Today, we are not going to consider that. Some other time, maybe we will. A comparison or links with Egypt and links with Mesopotamia and Oman are very interesting. However, I want you to look at the first column. That is the Indus column.
Indus column, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So in the Indus column, you see when it starts. So these are all BCE figures, okay? So that's 500 BCE, that is 1000 BCE, etc. What did I want you to remember? I wanted you to remember 9,000 years before the
9,000.
present.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what will that be? That will be around 7,000 BCE. So you see,
Yep.
do you see where this civilizational beginnings are today pegged? It's almost
Hmm.
exactly fitting in so well. See, 7,000 BCE, that's about
Hmm.
9,000 years ago.
Similar
That is,
timings for Egypt and Mesopotamia as well.
yeah.
Interesting.
But for the moment, we are just trying to connect
Yeah.
it to the Rig Veda, Utkarsh. So the start of the Saptarshi calendar and the start of this civilizational remains, the civilization's first, coming up, that is also around the same time. So 7,000 BCE, which is like the 6676 BCE of the Saptarshi calendar. Then we come to this 5,000 years ago. So when are we looking at? We are looking at the regionalization era. So I just want to explain that they have found that there was an early period of this civilization where there were only food producing and scattered settlements. Then they kind of banded together and became regions, and then they became part of a very well-defined civilization, which is called the integration era. The picture that I showed you of those very well-defined areas just now, that is this integration era. Can you see the date of the integration era? 3000 BCE?
Yeah, around between 25 and 3000. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are now considered the dates in which the Rig Veda and the Vedic corpus was, the 4 Vedas were composed, except the last one, the Atharvaveda is later. So that is in the same time period. Before 3100 BCE means you are still in the Harappan integration era. If we were to believe Mr. Max Muller, then we would have had to say that it's only 1500, 1500 BCE that the Rig Veda was actually composed. The minute evidence pushes the composition of the Rig Veda to a period which is much before that, Mr. Max Muller loses the plot. Because even according to him, it was only after 1500 that anybody came thundering down from the steps. So who was there composing the Rig Veda? It was obviously the people who already existed over here. So it was obviously the people from our Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, Lothal, Rakhigarhi, and the 2,500 settlements which have been found in northern, central, and northwestern India. So is this argument acceptable, or do you want to ask me something about it?
So what is the basis of this chart?
Oh, the basis of this is a standard chart, Utkarsh. You open any history book, the basis is the actual remains which have been found. So like I said, archaeological evidence, 2,500 settlements have been found around a certain place, which I will show you just now. Within those settlements, you have found remains of cities. You have found remains of, say, statuettes, figurines, seals, wells, pottery, the whole gamut of archaeological evidence. Much of this has been carbon dated. And it is
so great. So then you are essentially triangulating. You've got archaeological evidence.
Yes.
And then you have the dates mentioned by the authors, which are dates that can be verified through
archaeoastronomy.
Archaeoastronomy. Okay, clear.
So, so far, so good, right? Now we are going to go to another very interesting piece of evidence and another interesting thing that we need to discuss, which is called the Saraswati River. So right now, Utkarsh, are you with me? So have we proved that, or at least given evidence to show that spatially, same, time-wise, the maximum importance and prosperity of the civilization was the time at which we think that the Rig Veda was composed. Are you with me?
Yeah, according to the archaeological evidence and the best understanding of when the Rig Veda was composed, which are two separate pieces of information. Yep. Clear.
Yes. Two separate pieces of evidence. So now I don't know how one should proceed. Do you want me to first tell you what are the other similarities, or should we look at one big basis which we have not looked at as yet, which is the Saraswati River? I think we should look at the Saraswati River.
Sure, let's do that. Yeah.
So the Saraswati River, of course, merits a podcast all by itself.
Yeah, I wanted you to, after you do that, I wanted you to help us visualize a little bit the civilization. Today, for me, they are words. Or maybe as visuals, it's maybe that, like I went to Calcutta, the National Museum, I saw the little, the dancing girl from Harappa. There's which was there, a history textbook as well. She was much smaller than I thought she would be. She was in the museum. She was about this big.
Yeah, but it must have been a copy because the original is actually in the vaults. Nobody has it. Even the one in the National Museum is a copy. Yeah, but good, you saw it.
Yeah. So what I wanted you to do is, after you talk about Saraswati River, help us visualize a little bit the lives and times very briefly. This is not going to be in detail of these people. I'm just curious what they were at that particular
Yeah,
point of time, which is
kind
quite.
of what did they eat, what clothes did
Yeah,
they
yeah,
wear, that kind
yeah.
of thing.
Correct, correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
What was their
yeah,
society like? What was
correct.
their
Because
religion
for me,
like?
that would be reconciling, right? You have the great, what is it, the Great Bath, right?
Don't
That
call
is
it
in
the Great
Mohenjo-daro.
Bath, Utkarsh. Don't
I
call
know
it the
it's not.
Great Bath.
This
It's
is
not
what
a
is called
bath.
in the history textbook.
Yeah.
I know, I know.
It's not a bath.
So just
Yeah,
stuff like that, right? Just
yeah, yeah,
what it should be. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead with Saraswati River first.
yeah. So, the other big thing which helps us to put the two together is the Saraswati River. For the longest time, the Saraswati River, which is at the basis of Indic civilization, was dismissed as a myth. A myth basically
Mm-hmm.
means it's a lie, it's mythology. So
Yeah.
anything which was connected to the Saraswati River, and today we have so many things that it's amazing that it was missed by people. Like I said in the Mahabharata, there is actually the entire Tirth Yatra that Balram undertakes from Prabhas Tirth to the source of the Saraswati River in the Shivaliks. But I mean, all these things are ignored when they want to be ignored. What I want to do now is to tell you that once in 1924 or something, this Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were discovered. Then Kalibangan was discovered. Then a few others, and these were all found on the banks of the Sindhu River. So it was called the Harappa civilization, or it was called the Indus Valley Civilization. Fair enough, because in the beginning, that's where everything was found. But post 1947, India, the truncated India, conducted a lot of archaeological surveys on its own side of the border, obviously, not on the other side of the border. And slowly, it turned out that there was a pattern to the way new settlements were being discovered. Like I told you, there are almost 2,500 of them discovered along a certain pattern. And this pattern is a kind of curve like this, which starts from Dwarka, Bet Dwarka, and it goes up to the Shivalik. So it's the entire kind of northwestern part of India. So it is something to think about. Why? Because civilizations cluster for reasons. What are those reasons? Biggest thing is water. They cluster where they find water. So could it be that there was something over here? In the Rig Veda, there are umpteen descriptions of the river Saraswati as a huge gushing river, and it is described in the most strongest of terms as a really huge, big, strong, powerful river full of water. And there is a Nadi Suk, all it's the different parts of the river are mentioned. All the rivers in our in the Indian subcontinent, most of them are mentioned over there. So you find the river Saraswati, the goddess Saraswati, the idea of Saraswati is the basis of Vedic civilization. By the way, Utkarsh, Vak, the name of our podcast, also comes
Mm-hmm.
from Saraswati Devi because Vak Devi is Saraswati. So we ourselves have also named ourselves after Saraswati Devi. So it is the bedrock of Vedic civilization. So far, so good. Now, what's the connection with the Harappans or the IVC? Well, it turns out it is not just the IVC or the Sindhu Sabhyata, it is a Saraswati Sindhu Sabhyata. With development in technology, with development in, getting to see a lot of things from space, the actual paleo channels of the river Saraswati were discovered. And this I am going to show you from one of the technical institutions of India, which has done some work on this. This report is from it's from one of the national remote sensing centers. And this is going to show you through imaging, satellite imaging, etc., where the Saraswati River used to run. So I'm just going to share my screen again.
Okay.
So are you able to see this?
Yes. But you just make it zoom in a little bit, perhaps. That'll be good.
Okay, let's see. Is that better?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
So I'll just turn it up and down also. So this is through satellite imaging. This is from a National Remote Sensing Center. This is the picture that we get of the paleo channels of the Saraswati River. Can you see some blue lines which come
I was
from
going to say,
up there?
it looks so massive. So are they only showing Saraswati? They're not showing Ganga on the other side.
No,
What are
this
they?
the blue one. This is only
Yeah.
this. This is all Saraswati. Can you see this? Can you see my
Yeah.
pointer?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So this is what the Saraswati River is. This is what the paleo channels show. It is originating in the Shivaliks, which is the Himalaya, and then it comes down here and it falls down into the, empties itself into the Arabian Sea. Where? But Dwarka, Prabhas, Bet Dwarka. Remember that whole thing we had discussed about the Saraswati channel over there. So there is a place, can you see Dwarka here? And you can see that the river is emptying itself here and emptying itself here, Gulf of Kutch and Gulf of Kambat.
Yes, yes.
So this was the river Saraswati. This was the strength. Now, Utkarsh, I
It's
hope
basically
you
running through modern day Pakistan, actually. I look at it mostly.
not all of Pakistan, because you see, this is Haryana.
I mean, on the left
This
side,
is
you're
our
right.
Punjab.
Top of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
And this Thar Desert, Jaisalmer, all this is also us.
Okay.
This part is also us. Over here, this is
Yeah,
also us. Yes. To the left of this map, of course, it will go into Pakistan.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
bit of it is in Pakistan, but most
side question. Running through the Thar Desert. I'm assuming Thar Desert was not Thar Desert at that point in time.
Yes, of course. Of course. And again, because we are on the Saraswati, we will look at Balram's Yatra and we will discuss what happened to the Saraswati River. So now, Utkarsh, this is not a myth. Are you with me? This is remote sensing data. So are you with me that Saraswati River is not a myth? Because, you know, one has to push back on that too. That Saraswati is a myth. I read a lot of papers on Saraswati, and, you know, the earlier papers of the 90s, 80s, and before that, they were just not willing to believe that Saraswati was not a myth. So it's only with the development of satellite imaging, remote sensing, etc., that we have been able to see all this. So technology often brings out truths which are lost. So now I'm going to stop sharing this and I will share something else. Don't turn on your camera because I'm going to immediately share something else.
Don't worry, I would.
I hope that this is, what can I say, helpful. Is this helpful? Because I do want this to be not confusing, but I want it to be
no, it's
clear.
very clear. Which is why, and what I like is what you're sharing is, firstly, you're giving different pieces of evidence. And I do like the fact that it's evidence versus, you could even say that text stories can be evidence as well, but these are not just stories. These are things that can be verified empirically.
Yes.
But separate from each other. So I like that. So yes. So far it's very clear to me.
Okay, now I will share something else with you. And we shall not forget to say thank you to Dr. Prabhakar for all the work that he has done. And we will appreciate all the work that he has done because it makes our knowledge dissemination much easier. So Utkarsh, I'm showing you that same thing again, which I showed you earlier. And can you see that this is along the same paleo channels of the Saraswati River? You've just seen the Saraswati River, right?
Yeah.
You've just seen the Saraswati River, and it is along the same paleo channels of the Saraswati River, isn't it? You can see the same place where it falls down into the sea, the Gulf of Kutch and the Gulf of Kambat. And then you see all the sites which go
Yep.
right here. See, this is exactly where so it is along the Saraswati River.
Mhm.
So what do we have here now? Finally, when we are getting all these pieces of evidence together, what do we have here? Please turn on your camera now. We'll have a bit of a discussion on this before we go on to Balram's Yatra, which will show a lot of these things. So what have we here? We have the Saraswati, Devi, the river as well as the goddess is the basis of the civilizational ethos of the Rigvedic or the Vedic people. The Saraswati is in actual fact, in the physical world, the bedrock of the civilization of the people we call the Harappans. So what are we to understand from that? I want your opinion on this, Utkarsh.
I think it's pretty clear that these are the same people.
Yes.
I think they can. I mean, if you say otherwise, you're deliberately looking for something that's not there. So I think it's
You're just
what
obfuscating
is that?
things which are there.
What is that statement? The simplest explanation is always the right one. What's that principle
Yes.
called?
Yes. Occam's razor. No.
Occam's razor. Yes,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. So, but you see, it has not been that simple. What kind of evidence have we got together, Utkarsh? We have got together remote sensing data which was not available, say about 50 to 100 years ago. Then we have
Hmm.
also got new and exciting discoveries of actual physical remains of these
Mhm.
cities of the Saraswati-Sindhu civilization. Now I'm going to call it the Saraswati-Sindhu civilization because we've seen that most of the settlements are along the Saraswati River, few along
Hmm.
the Sindhu River. Now this
Mhm.
Saraswati-Sindhu civilization seems to have died out around 1900 BCE. Died out, no, I won't call it. What happened is that they seem to have suffered many reverses, and their vibrant urban centers, their trade, their prosperous cities, all of them suffered great reverses. Why?
Hmm.
That is because of the drying up of the Saraswati River. Now, why did the Saraswati River dry up? So that is an interesting paleo mystery. Many books have been written on it. One of the best is uh, Michael Denino's book on this. It's an amazing book, The
Okay.
Lost River. I would suggest that everyone reads it. But I'll just give you a kind of
Yeah.
shortcut answer because we'll do a podcast on this one. But the shortcut
Hmm.
answer is that there are one or two things which have been proposed. One is a 90-year drought. So monsoons failed for 90 years. And again, the paleoclimatologists have seen that, yes, they can prove this. There are a few papers for this, a few people who have done this. I can again send those to you
Hmm.
if you want to read them. The other very interesting thing, I find it very interesting, is tectonic changes. Remember Himalaya, Shivalik, these are all very young mountain ranges. And there
Hmm.
are tectonic shifts. So there were two very big rivers which used to the water used to swell the waters of the Saraswati. These were the Yamuna and the Satluj. So because
Okay.
of certain tectonic shifts, the Yamuna and the Satluj were disconnected with the Saraswati and connected to which river? Ganga.
Okay.
So what happened was that Ganga then became the bedrock of our civilization, which it is even today. Even
Yeah.
today, we are a Gangetic civilization. And of course, there are other rivers, and I will not downplay their importance.
Hmm.
But the Satluj and the Yamuna stopped meeting the Saraswati. Therefore, the waters in the Saraswati River dried up. And it became a kind of intermittent river from a strong gushing force which came from the Shivaliks down to the Prabhas Patan area, the Gulf of Kutch
Mhm.
and the Gulf of
Hmm.
Kambat. It became a river which was drying up. There are interesting stories in our Itihas and Puran about this. Apart from Balram's Teeth, which I will talk about, there is also the story that there was this king who had who was doing some sacrifice and rituals, and he had Agni inside his mouth. He was not to take it out because then Agni burns everything. But due to certain circumstances in the story, somebody called Agni and Agni jumped out. And while this king was doing these rituals on the banks of the Saraswati, Agni jumped out and started burning up the river Saraswati. And the river Saraswati started drying up in spots. So this is a kind of storytelling way of describing the drying up of the Saraswati river. This is something
So
which
what do
has
we
been
think the cause of that 90-year monsoon was?
the 90-year monsoon failure. The cause of that 90-year monsoon failure. Is that what you're asking? Oh,
Yes,
so
yes.
that is due to world climate situation, Utkarsh, currents, and I think at that time there were also various big things happening, which I will have to read in that climate paper because I won't be able to tell you that.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
think it had anything to do with your favorite young dryas, or did it?
No, it was nothing to do with that. So what I'm asking is, was there, so today, what is on everyone's mind? Humans causing climate change.
Yeah. No,
Is
so
there an
that's,
element
yeah, yes.
Is there an element of humans causing climate change in that? Is there any evidence, any thought or something on those lines, or is it just climate change?
So,
The world
Utkarsh, as
doing
you
what
can
it wants to do.
imagine, it has become a very pressing issue. And there's a lot of research going on in this area. As soon as anything is arrived at, any conclusion, we shall do a podcast on it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
exactly the question that you have asked, that did humans contribute to this? Or was it
Yeah.
something beyond their grasp or beyond their control?
Yeah.
That's a good question, which is actually being explored as we speak.
Okay.
But right
No,
now,
that's good. I mean,
see,
what I like is what we do in this is if we don't have an answer, we don't pretend to, you don't pretend to
yeah.
have one. So we
No,
don't
no,
know.
no, we don't know. But
Yeah.
many people are asking this question. Therefore, they are exploring this question. See, in today's world, it's an obvious question, right? That there was this civilization which died out. Did it die out because of something that they did? Did they, create this kind of climate change? So when we find out, I'm sure it will be a very interesting answer. But Utkarsh, given the fact that we are looking at tectonic changes and the capture of Satluj and Yamuna by the Ganga, I somehow don't feel that it is human influenced climate change. But
Yeah.
I am open to evidence. Whatever the evidence says. Right now, we don't have any evidence of that.
Okay.
We only have evidence of the failure of the monsoons, and we have evidence of this tectonic shift, which you may read in The Lost River by Michel Temino. And there are lots of papers on it. It's become a very, very well dealt with topic today. So you can read this. So what happened? There was this river, which was the lifeline for this civilization, the Saraswati-Sindhu civilization. Then it dried up. Then they had to shift themselves running after water, because you can see in the remains, the archaeological remains, there are people who, cities have shifted just this much to come nearer to the water source. The water source shifts some more, then they shift some more. And the entire river did not dry up all at once. It dried up in phases. This has been seen through the paleo exploration and that evidence, as well as what is written in the Mahabharata and what is written about the Tirth Yatra that Balram carries out. Interestingly, Utkarsh, that there was this big earthquake in Gujarat. You are very well aware of that earthquake.
I was there.
You were there.
Yes.
So, after that earthquake, something shifted and some parts of the hidden Saraswati came up again in Gujarat and in Haryana. And after that, there was an attempt by the government of India to develop these channels, and a lot of work on this is being done in Haryana. So, I just wanted to tell you one of the anecdotes that one of my friends who is from Haryana, Yamunanagar, from the village through which the ancient Saraswati passes. She called up yesterday because she was very interested in this topic, and she told me that it was, you say that it's only through remote sensing and after the earthquake and all this that we know that the Saraswati passed through this area. But in my village, for God knows how long, everyone has known that there is a temple to the goddess Saraswati. And there is some water which comes from underground and goes into the temple pond. And it is said to come from the river Saraswati. Through all this technology and remote sensing and XYZ, this was found to be actually factually correct. My point here is that when we look at history and historiography in the Indian context, there are certain sources of evidence. According to Western historiography, we must add folk memory to these sources of evidence. Because remember, for us, it goes back so long ago that we cannot have written records and inscriptions, etc. It's through what people tell the next generation and the next generation. Because how did those people know that the Saraswati River was here and water from there comes into the temple? Therefore, they had a temple to the goddess Saraswati. So the general answer 50 years ago was foolish people, they don't know anything, just a myth. So, but you see, it was actually found to be there. So perhaps all your modern technology is only, telling us stuff that you already know, but you refuse to recognize. So that was just something which struck me when I had this conversation yesterday. And there are umpteen stories like this. Now, I don't know. I think we are already at, I don't know what, are we at the 45-minute mark?
We are actually closer to the 1 hour mark.
Then I don't know. Perhaps I had a lot of visual aids and a long story to tell you about Balram.
I think we will not be able to do justice to the visual representation of these folks. I think that will need another one. But I wanted to ask you one important question, linking to the topic of the two being connected. Script.
Yes, but Utkarsh, we have to have the script next time because I have so much information and it's such amazing information.
Okay.
How can we just let it go? How are we going to let it go?
To be an appendix.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll have to do maybe part 2 because what do we have left? We have all the questions left. We have Balram's journey left and we have script left. And I can't do justice to the script. And I found out some very interesting things myself yesterday while reading a few papers about how by rotating the Indus Brahmi script, you get the Devanagari script. So I actually want to do it and show you.
Okay.
So it has to be visual.
We should do all of this correctly. So that's okay. We'll make this a part 1. I think there is a lot in here by itself.
Yes.
I'm just trying to see if there's any other audience question which we can fit in, which doesn't need further elaboration.
No, one of the audience questions is another very big thing by itself. He has asked about Keeladi and Adi Channalur and how they fit in, and that is an amazing story by itself. So Utkarsh, I think it will have to be part 2. All these things are interesting, full of evidence, and these are things which people need to know.
Okay, we'll put it all in part 2 then.
So should we apologize to all those people who are expecting answers to their questions this time? Don't worry. We're going to answer them beautifully next time. So we have your questions on the southern part of India. We have your questions on Shivji. We have your questions on, what was the other question, Utkarsh?
Some questions anyway will be answered when you see episode 3, which was concerning DNA and Aryan invasion. So that we can already refer the folks who asked that.
Yes.
We did have questions on something on Odisha as well, by the way, not just South India. And we also have some questions on essentially describing the folks, putting a face to these to the Saraswati-Sindhu civilization. What did they eat? How did they dress? Society, religion, lifestyle. Those are the questions that we have.
And you know what I also want to do is the gentleman who has asked the question about Kiladi and Adi Channalur, using that, I will connect up Gujarat, Saraswati River, Adi Channalur, Kiladi, Vaigai River, and in fact talk about the, what can I say, the basic, even prehistoric unity of the subcontinent.
Okay, sounds good.
So then the questions next time, because we have too much information to give you. And the script, Utkarsh, you were very interested in knowing about the script, and you were asking me what happened, why is it all become so indecipherable? So that's an interesting story in itself. The Harappan script and its decipherment, that's a very interesting story by itself. So I think perhaps we just cut it here and we will do it in part two.
Yeah.
Perhaps that would
Actually,
be
I
best.
also want a part three, if you don't mind. Which is I want to understand how the Saraswati-Sindhu civilization is connected to Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt.
Okay,
What is
let's do
concurrent?
that.
What were the
Okay,
links? So we can do that as a part three. That is because I
okay.
think for most people who are interested in history, or I mean, to me, honestly, ancient Egypt was a lot more fascinating than ancient India, frankly,
Yeah,
with all
yeah,
the
yeah.
pyramids and all
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
So I do
true.
want to understand a little bit. And I also do understand that the Egyptians at the time of the Romans, they did not think of, they thought of themselves as modern, and there was much more ancient civilization that existed before that they were aware of.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to kind of reconcile some of that.
And you know, this word that you used, aware, I have been thinking very deeply about this. Were people, say, in 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago, were they aware of all these things which had passed before
Mm-hmm.
them? So, you know, when I told you a story of the two brothers who were in that flying Viman, remember? And the elder
Yeah.
brother took off and the younger brother didn't have space, so he went somewhere else. Where did he go? He went to a deserted and abandoned city. Was that a Harappan city? The deserted and abandoned city that he went to. Remember, this story was written about, say, what, 2,600 years ago? So there could
Mm-hmm.
have been abandoned Harappan cities. So in these stories, can we find reflections of the past? See, nobody has ever tried this, Utkarsh. Nobody has ever done this. So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't look for something, you're not going to find it if you keep your eyes closed.
Yeah.
So I have been trying to think about everything that I read, and I've been trying to think about what is said about the past and how we can
Mm-hmm.
understand it in Saraswati Sindhu terms. It's
Mm-hmm.
something I've started. If I arrive at any conclusions, I will share them with the podcast.
Okay, sounds good.
So, Utkarsh,
So we'll
maybe
end
we
it here.
shouldn't say bye. We don't want to say bye because this is not the end. There's a
Keep
part two
posted.
and a part three.
Part two. If you're watching this a week later than this is released, you can immediately go to part two right over here. If you're
Yes.
watching this as it's released, wait for it. Sorry.
Then wait for another week. But then it'll be a treat. Next week, you'll get to know all about the food, dress, society, religion, cities, script of the Saraswati Sindhu civilization. And you'll get all your questions answered in great detail.
Wonderful.
So,
Okay.
not bye bye.
See you in a bit.
See you in a bit with part two.